In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky, the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
Go. Hey folks, welcome to the Two Grumpy Bastards Memorial Day extravaganza. We're going to be doing little things here, little things there. You're going to get my usual Flanders Field recitation. And what I thought I would do was reach out to some of my colleagues and friends from my military past. And it's my military past, not necessarily theirs, because I'm old as fuck. I've been retired since 2015. My God, it's been almost 9 years. And I only feel that old in body. I'm really immature, as most of you know, in spirit and in mind. And since I'm now getting dumber every year as I've gotten to this age, I feel younger every year as I get dumber, which is kind of cool. It's kind of like the intellectual Benjamin Button thing going on with my brain. I have an old friend of mine, a younger than me friend of mine, but we've known each other for a long time. I met Forrest back in, I'd say around 2005, 2006, probably, Forrest.
Yeah, 2006.
Yeah. So, shoot, we've been going on almost 20 years and knowing each other. That's bizarre because that was such a fun period of my life, and that literally so many vivid memories from that. But hey, good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you too, Coop.
So what's going on with you? Tell us a little bit about what Forrest is doing. I met Forrest, just to full disclosure, when I was an ROTC instructor in the blue state of California, and he was one of our stud cadets, one of my favorite cadets, actually. All around good dude, big time wise ass motherfucker, which I
It's only
appreciate.
gotten worse.
That's right. I hope so. My God, I hope you learned a little something from me. My God, put a lot of effort in. Forrest, great guy. One of my favorite guys, high performant dude. Always liked him. And one of those guys that I as an instructor, there's lines you don't cross, but it was always one of those guys I felt more like I couldn't have sex with him. But no, okay, I'm totally joking. But one of those guys I felt definitely a kinship with, and more than just like a instructor cadet relationship, just a good dude. Somebody I thought, yeah, he's going to be somebody I want to keep in my life and shoot the shit with throughout my life. And God bless America, we've managed to keep in touch all these years. So what's been going on, Forrest? Tell us a little bit about your life.
Well, I was thinking about this prior to the podcast, and it occurred to me that the first time you and I talked would have been 2005 when I reached out to the ROTC program, and you were the instructor that reached back out to me when I was enlisted about coming into the program.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
Yep.
2005, and then I got to the program in 2006 at Sac State. You left about a little ways through there. Russ left a little ways through there, but then I commissioned in. You can see it behind me. I was fortunate enough to commission as an aviation officer, and I did that for a long time. And then I was even more fortunate and honored enough to get selected to come back and teach ROTC like you guys did.
Mm-hmm.
And that was probably one of the best opportunities and coolest opportunities I've ever had. And I still keep in touch with a bunch of my cadets too. In fact, last Friday when I was out at Fort Lewis, I got to be there for the promotion of one of my cadets to captain. So it's like,
awesome.
It's incredible. And that was, Yeah. I mean, this is one of my flight engineers behind me went on one of his flights with a GoPro, of course. And I just figured it'd be a cool photo for this as it is Memorial Day. And we're thinking about those that we've served with and those that we lost. And yeah, no, I'm way behind you, but I will hopefully retire. At least my paperwork is pretty much ready to go next year, July of 2025.
God, that is insane to think that.
It's pretty ridiculous.
God, that is insane. I was in my mid 30s when I was an instructor there, and most of you,
Yep.
you were a little bit older than some of the cadets because you prior service time and all that. But I had 19-year-olds and 18-year-olds, and they're like lieutenant. I get getting promoted to lieutenant colonel and shit
Yeah.
like that. And I'm going, what the fuck? Actual fuck. It's crazy business. It's absolutely crazy business. But it's I know they believe me, and I know you're probably already feeling it, even though you're many years behind me. But Einstein was right, man. That whole special relativity thing. Time just gets shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter, and
Yep.
warp speed. I think it's been 4 years since the pandemic started. In the last 4 years, I don't even know what has happened or where I was in the last 4 years. It is just so bizarre, and it used to seem like every day was very notable, and I couldn't even tell you, other than falling down my stairs because my dog Lucy tripped me last week and breaking 4 ribs and having a severely bruised kidney. That's the only day well, no, I remember every day since, because I've been in horrible pain and I can't sleep. But that's like I otherwise I couldn't really tell you. I'm very busy. It's not like I don't stay busy. I don't sit on my ass and play video games, but yeah, it's a weird life. It's a weird
Yeah.
life. I look back on that time when I was hanging out with you guys and trying to impart what little wisdom I had into the skulls full of mush that you guys had. Um, that
Yeah.
literally
Yep.
seems like yesterday, and I think it probably
Yep.
seems like yesterday because it was such a good time in my life, and I loved that job, and I loved you guys in a very platonic way, of course,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
but in a very
I
no homo kind of way. Um, but
the
no, good,
baton.
good, good group of kids, and especially those Sac State kids. I really enjoyed the ones I recruited, and watching you guys grow through the program and growing that program from nothing as far as numbers when I got there to a very viable, outstanding program. And that was one of the
Yep.
best achievements, proudest achievements of my life, actually.
Yeah.
So I'm glad. What kind of memories do you have of those days? And by the way, Forrest does know my co-host, my usual co-host, Mr. Retired Colonel Russ Meyer, very well as well. I know he's a very memorable human being.
His book around here somewhere.
Well, he's got like 5, so you better get busy.
I know. I
No,
gotta get busy reading those,
just
but
between you and me, the first one sucks. But other than that, they're pretty good.
I remember. I put it somewhere around here. I got a way too long of reading list. No. Um, like the first thing I remember coming in there, was my conversations with you and then Sergeant Mocker.
Oh God, I'm
And
hoping to get him on here this week for a segment. I'm going to beg him if I have to. One of the all-time greats. One of the all-time
yeah,
greats.
because he was the primary instructor there, so and he was always there, and then you were
Right.
always there. And then we'd see Russ pretty frequently. Uh Major Herringer, or yeah, Major Herringer retired. I think he's retired. I don't know.
Yeah, he's retired.
Um,
Yeah, I think he went back to the winery.
yeah.
Yeah, that
And
sucks to have a winery your family owns to go back to. That sucks.
yeah, whatever. It
Yeah.
sounds like a great retirement.
Yeah, no
No,
kidding. No
one of my
kidding.
favorite.
I said that out of fake envy, by the way. God bless him. He's a
Oh
good
yeah.
guy.
Oh
He's
yeah.
a great guy.
Well, it was Russ was trying to get me to, all of us to go infantry, and Herringer was trying to get us all to go aviation. And I already, when my enlisted time, we always had Kiowas above our heads. So I was like, I kind of want to go do that. But if I get infantry, that ain't bad either. Because I
What did
had
you do?
basically been in.
What did you do as an enlisted soldier? What was your
So I
MOS?
was a 19 kilo. I was a tanker. And then when I
I
deployed,
thought I remembered that. Yep, yep, yep.
we were basically, you know, ad hoc infantrymen. We got attached to an infantry company and we never used our tanks. So we tried to do everything the infantry guys did with a platoon that's basically half the size of an infantry platoon. And then they gave us a squad of infantry from the headquarters platoon to kind of augment us. And then we kind of actually got a fire team of at one point in time, so we were actually kind of plussed up. But you try, trying to do cordon and search with basically a 16-man platoon at first. It's kind of tough, but
Yep.
make do. And so
Sure.
that was always just that was shitty. But you look back on it with fond memories. But I was like, you know what, if I go back and I want to, if my OML standing doesn't work out right and I can be an infantryman or an armor guy again, that wouldn't be bad. But I can't remember the PMS's name. I don't remember his name at that time, but Herringer was like, you're competitive, put your packet in for aviation. And I did, and I got picked up for that. So
was it Mark Conley?
that sounds familiar. Yes.
Yeah. Really nice guy, dark-haired
Yes.
guy. Yeah.
Yes.
Great guy. One of my favorite people who's ever lived, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah. As an MS3, he didn't, and an MS4, I was like, I don't know, but I didn't have quite the same relationship as you guys did. So it was different. But yeah, I remember, I think one of my favorite memories of all time, even though I didn't get to complete it because there was other stuff that happened, was prepping and training for the Baton Death March. So that training regimen that you had with us and that we were doing there was one of the best times ever. And then going down there and doing it, I can't remember what happened. You couldn't make it. So we went down there as friggin' cadets. And then, actually, this is going to kind of tone into a sad story, but it is for Memorial Day. Remember Patrick Jones?
I remember the name.
So we were busy doing the Baton Death March, and we were about mile 13 or 14 in, and he started getting heat casualty symptoms. We'd been carrying double rucks for the tiny little female on the team who couldn't keep up with the rest of us. And he started getting heat casualty symptoms. And so I stopped with him, and I'd already been a heat casualty twice in Iraq. And we stopped, they hooked him up, they put 2 IVs into him. And I stood back up after we got him onto a bus to go back to the start line. And my whole lower body just cramped up. And I'm like, well, I guess this shit isn't going to happen. So even though it didn't happen that time, it was like, I'm going to come back here and do this. And then he was killed in a motorcycle accident in 2017.
Oh, geez, I did not hear that. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think it was July 14th or July 17th.
I just can't put a face. I know the name. I just can't put a face to it. Not one of the cadets I knew probably as well, but
no, he would, he was an MS1 that year. So he was really junior compared. So you would, he was stationed at Fort Carson. He was riding his motorcycle and he pulled out into the road and got hit. And 2017, he left us. So I had a shirt made up. We all had shirts made up that were custom made, and mine said, in memory of Captain Patrick S. Jones. And because he and I had tried to complete the thing together, and you better damn well believe in 2019 when I took my cadets back there that I made that thing. So
God bless you. You know what happened to me that year? Just to change and God bless him. Yeah, thank you for telling that. I did not know that, so I'll definitely add him to my list of people that I honor coming up this weekend. I'll tell you what happened that time I was training. I overtrained. I way overtrained, and I was humping 90-pound rucks up and down like at the land nav site when we were going on FTXs and stuff. You remember Sergeant Torres fighting Joe Torres? He was like, "What, do you got pillows in that thing?" And then he tried to pick it up, and Joe was a big stout dude, and he couldn't pick my ruck up. He's like, "What the fuck," And I was getting up at, like, I lived in Sacramento out there in Natomas, and I was getting up at 4 a.m, running like 5-6 miles, take a shower, drink my coffee. Then I'd head in and do like a road march with you guys. Mm-hmm. Then I'd hit the gym at noon and then probably do another ruck march. And so one morning, probably about a month shy, it was February-ish, balmy February morning in Sacramento. I'm doing my usual run, and I take my shower, and I'm sitting in front of my computer, reading the news, having my coffee before I head in to UC Davis. And I'm like, God, you know what? I feel like I got blue ball syndrome or something like that.
That's right.
You remember that? And I pulled my shorts down, and my left nut is the size of a pomegranate and the color of a pomegranate. I had herniated and ruptured myself by overtraining, and my intestine was in my ball sack.
Oh,
yeah. And so I had to have surgery. I had to go to UC Davis Medical Center and have surgery and repair everything. So that's why I wasn't able to go and do it.
I was pissed.
I would have won my age group that year, man. I was I was in supreme shape. That was like, I was at Gold's Gym every day. I mean, I was killing it. And that was my way of dealing with the end of my 7-year relationship, was just, I'm gonna overtrain. And I did. I totally overtrained. I see I'm like 260 now, and I'm badly out of shape because I haven't been able to work out, or I'm truly physically not been work out very much in the last year. I was like 220. I dropped down to like
Jesus.
220 back down. Yeah, I was lean and
Oh,
mean. And 6'3", 220. I was gonna kill it because that fucking German had beat me that one year, and because he trained in the Alps, and I was pissed.
that
And
altitude training will do it for you.
oh yeah. So that next year I went to Gold's Gym, where they had a hyperbaric chamber, and was training in that fucking thing on the 18-degree treadmill and shit like that
Wow.
with my ruck on. But anyway, that's what happened to me. I didn't want to take away from your
No,
story, but
no,
yeah, those were
no,
good
that
times.
was.
I love training for that thing, and it's my goal. Um, I get healed up this year. I still got, it's my goal to either next year or the year after to go back and compete in my age category and see how I can do. I've got a
Yeah,
lot of I got a lot of physical problems, but nothing I haven't overcome before.
I would love like. Then the year I got here to Boise State, like we were getting ready to go, and of course that's when COVID hit and everything shut down. So like they shut down the Baton Death March and everything, and they didn't bring it back for a couple of years, and I kind of left as even reserve cadre. Now I'm doing something else at staff, but it was like I was super psyched to take the cadets down there again and just even just be part of like the rooting cadre, not actually competing and not actually doing it again. And I would love to go back and do it again. I'd either do the 13 or do another 26.2. That's the only way I'm doing 26.2. I'm not running it.
Yeah, I hear you.
I'm walking. My feet are so jacked up from running so much. I got plantar fasciitis, both feet. I've just had surgery a couple weeks for one of them.
Oh geez, that is so
I'll walk
painful.
it.
That is
I'll
so
walk
painful.
it.
But yeah, I hear you.
That's all I'll do. Lower impact. I'll just put a 35-pound ruck on and I'll walk it. It's not as bad as running.
What do you what do you progress? What are you doing right now? Tell everybody what you're doing right now currently in your career and your life and all that.
So I left the active duty as an APMS at the University of Oregon, which was where I taught for 2 years. And then I transitioned over to the reserve unit before the 414th SROTC. So, and you had a part in that one.
Yes, I did.
And I took over as an MS3. I was an MS3 instructor at U of O, and I transitioned straight into basically taking over one of the satellite campuses as an MS3 instructor here on the reserve side. Did that for a couple years. I was also the recruiting officer there for 2 years. As
You poor son of a bitch.
and yeah, I started that job the week that COVID shut everything down as well. So
Oh, that fuck. Well, I
that
guess
was
that
fun.
must have been kind of easy your first like 9 months then. All right. Yeah.
Well, yeah, except for like basically the whole world was shut down. The students weren't in person, and mommies and daddies were having all their kids come home, or like it was really bizarre. They were either having them kids come home, or they were sending their kids on the plus side, we're sending the kids out of places like California, Washington, and Oregon to come to places where the schools were actually in person, like Boise. And it was like, okay, all right, but still trying to do a recruiting job where you try to do a lot of face-to-face type things, and you're basically doing a lot of this. Zoom was our friend. It was just constantly on Zoom, trying to do recruiting things through Zoom with parents and students and stuff like that. And then the guy came back that I'd replaced, and so he got the job back thanks to you, Sarah. And so then I went back on unemployment for a little bit, and now I'm a fleet manager for an engineering consulting firm while also doing the reserve thing. And I'll do that for a little while and see where things go. I'm looking at going into risk management and enterprise risk management, crisis management, stuff like that on the civilian side. It's kind of like
Yep.
doing mission analysis. It'll be
Yeah.
fun.
Weird that former military officers would be good at such things, huh?
And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, you just have to do it for
Never
basically
managed any
everything you
risk or
do.
crisis or anything. Not ever in my
Yes.
career.
No, we don't have to do it. Don't have to do it, as we would call it, an electronic risk assessment worksheet or an ERA for every single flight and every single mission
Sure.
and every single event. And
Sure.
and those are just small things.
No,
So,
God, no. I know. I feel for you guys. Having been on several hundred sorties on Blackhawks, mainly in my life, not as a passenger. I'm not a driver like Forrest, but as a guy on there, yeah, I've having helped with the process and do all that stuff. That's, you guys are you have to be incredibly precise, incredibly detailed, incredibly. It's amazing what goes into it. So it's why I like to tell people, and you could speak to this better than me, but there are so few actual incidents when you consider the risk and the amount of technology and all of the moving parts, not just as a whole, but even in an individual piece of equipment, that there aren't more incidents depend is a true tribute to that whole system. It really isn't as much of a pain in the ass as it is. Um, when I got out briefly as a captain and I stayed in the reserve, hence me getting back in, and I worked for a Fortune 500 company up here in the Pacific Northwest. They hired me specifically because they knew I was good at that stuff,
Yeah.
assessment, risk management, all that kind of thing. And I hated it. I hated every fucking second of work. Well, no, I liked my first year, but then they booted me to a different type of job, and then I really hated it, and the war saved me, frankly.
Yeah.
They brought me back on active duty, and then managed to round out my career. But yeah, it's crazy how much that taught me, still to this very day, that I can impart to people that are still in the active, especially supervisors that are in the active, and I'm give them a little bit of the green machine view on how to handle situations, or how to, everything from how to communicate to establishing priorities, operations, all of that stuff, and risk management, all of that. And I'll tell you, I don't know how it is with your civilian job, but the ones that I've kind of helped mentor and I was a part of are fairly primitive compared to what you and I had as our standard in the Army.
Yeah. It's, without going into too much detail, it's the, well, it's there's multiple aspects to everything, and there's multiple aspects of this. The thought process that goes into assessing the risks that drivers, because I'm managing a fleet of pickup trucks, you can tell that the thought process behind assessing the risks that they're about to go into is sometimes damn near nil. And also, on the flip side, something that we are ingrained with, I think, in the military, is a sense of responsibility and integrity that they just don't have. Like, for example, recently I had a driver put diesel exhaust fluid into the diesel tank of a pickup truck, and he's done that twice in the course of 4 months. And I just want to scream at him and yell and cuss, and I can't. And the mentality is, oh, the company will take care of me. And that's the supervisors too. Like, oh, it's okay. I'm like, no, this is negligence. And they're like, oh no, you can't say that. I'm like, well, how else do you describe this situation? This is the
You
second
can't
time
say
now.
that.
This is the second time now. He's done this twice. I
Uh,
made him, like, I pulled military shit in here. I'm like, okay, you fucked up. You get to generate the training event, the training aid, so that this doesn't happen anymore. And he developed it. And here we are, like a month after he develops the training aid, he's doing it again. And I'm like, these are senior people, older than me, should have way more sense, should understand this shit. And I got privates that take more ownership of their shit
absolutely,
than you guys do.
absolutely,
You guys are like, just fuck it. It's not my problem. It's not my truck. I don't own it. Here you
right,
go. You take
right.
care of it. Mother
I
fuck.
uh, I explained the concept of the hand receipt and the sub hand receipt to somebody
Oh,
um, about how that whole works, and they were just absolutely astonished and like just so like, oh my god, that's how you. I go, yeah, you actually, like, when I was a company commander, I signed for like $500 million worth. I owned every single vehicle, every single desk, every single
mm-hmm.
chair, every single copy machine, every single weapon. I owned every one of them. Oh my god. Well, no, here's what you do: is you sub hand receipt that down to the next level, and it ends up at the user level.
Yep.
That's how that works. And it's like, yes, yeah, you actually own it. Technically, you own it. You're responsible for it.
Yep.
And
Yep.
yeah,
Yep. Yep.
telling about how we used to call them reports of survey, but they call them, I guess, still call them flipples now.
Mm-hmm.
How I did a
Yep.
month long flipple, and the boss who had erroneously assigned somebody a responsibility that they never should have, because they didn't have oversight, supervisory oversight of this stuff, and how I nailed the boss instead of the guy that he wanted nailed,
I
and
did the
how that
same
whole
thing.
process worked. Yeah, and it's just like you say that to somebody who's in a corporate situation, they're just astonished.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my god, that would be so awesome. Oh, you mean actually holding people who are actually have the equipment and have that responsibility accountable for all of that? Of course.
Hold them
It's like,
accountable.
what if there's an accident? Well, then it's an accident. Then you do an investigation, and
Yeah.
it's like, nope,
Yeah,
not
they don't understand that. Like, look, there's an extenuating circumstance always.
right,
Like, that's why we do what we call an investigation or a 15-6, or a
right,
flipple.
exactly,
You're going in there and you're looking at, okay, was it true negligence? or was it an accident, or was it a combat loss, or who
Right.
was actually
Right.
responsible? In my case, it was something similar. Like I had this medevac company spread out all over South Afghanistan, and the company commander, a major, and I was a lieutenant. And so they started out because they were trying to blame a bunch of warrant officers for losing a bunch of really high quality and expensive binoculars. And so they put a lieutenant in charge of it because they thought they were investigating warrant officers. And I started interviewing all these folks. I'm like, okay, well, where's your inventory? When was this assigned to you? What, do you have actual control of this? Was it ever delegated down to you? Do you have command authority over this thing or command and control over this thing? They're like, well, it was just left here at the base and I was told that I have to do an inventory of it once a month and it wasn't there. I'm like, well, oh, shit. So who has the actual control of this thing? Well, no one ever actually drove it down to the lowest level. And I had to turn the inspection, the flipple back to my S3 and be like, sir, I don't think this was ever issued out to these soldiers. Like, now I'm investigating a major and I can't do that as a lieutenant. And
Right.
it's like, oh shit. And he was pissed because now that meant, that he had to complete the flipple. Like, sorry, but
It happens. No, I've
they
seen that
didn't
happen
they
a
didn't
lot.
actually do their job. So now he's he's responsible for this.
Well, but
Whoops.
yeah, you still did most of the legwork. I've seen that happen a lot where,
Oh yeah.
the original
Oh, that was
investigating officer has to be recused because of, oh, well, it comes down to, it might be, oh, it looks like it might be somebody in my chain of command that might be, up
yeah.
above me. And it's like, I can't do that. Can't investigate somebody in my chain of command above me. Yeah.
Oopsies.
Yeah. Whoopsie. So, hey, I want to shift gears. Good stuff though. I appreciate it. I want to shift gears. We talked a little bit off camera here about some of the stuff that you experienced as a
Ooh.
we won't get into raw politics, but I'd like to talk about politics in the military a little bit with you on this one, and then we're definitely gonna have you back for the actual Two Grumpy Bastards podcast. Russ and I've been talking about it. We just lazy. We reach out to people and we get like, well, I'm busy and stuff like that, so we kind of quit trying. But I know you and I just recently started chatting back and forth again, which is cool. Thank you for getting a hold of me. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of a D-bag when it comes to that.
Yeah. All the
I need to be
technology
better. I need to be
we're
better
more
about it. It's in my goals for this year is to quit being such an isolating D-bag. But so no, you were telling me a little bit about, and I'd just like to get your impression in general, since you still have some tendrils. You're still an active reservist, and you've had some experience. The Army, I don't think, if you remember the Major Koopman that you knew when you were a cadet, I don't think I would survive 5 seconds in uniform these days. Because I would not change. I would not be any different. I would not swallow the fucking sputum of this DEI bullshit that's come down the pike ever since um, the Obama administration was in their second term, especially because he had nothing to lose and threw everything out the window.
oh yeah,
Oops, I got political there. But I would like kind of get your
I guess.
impressions on what your experiences have been. I don't expect you to do anything to damage your current status in the Army Reserve or anything like that, but just your maybe give us whatever you want to do. No pressure. I just kind of would like to get, one of the reasons I wanted to do this is kind of get that perspective on how much the military's changed since dinosaurs like me were roaming the earth, and Smod took us out and made us extinct. And then these little rodent creatures managed to rise from the mud and become the prevalent species. And yes, that is all a metaphor, folks, for what's going on with DEI in the military. And Russ and I talk about DEI a lot, but I'd like to get your perspective on that for us.
So, as an instructor, well, first off, you got to be an instructor. I've been taught to be an instructor as an instructor pilot, and that didn't have any of that. But you're teaching folks that are already military. Then you have to go through another course to be an instructor at ROTC, and they've got a couple different levels of that. And they sent me to one that is called the Master Educator course. Not to put too fine a point on it, but I didn't continue with that program because it's the start of a master's program, but it is all based around an administration degree in higher education, which just literally means you're in it with DEI. And that's all it was. The entire first week was, okay, you're going to produce a report on how racist your state was that your school is in. And
Nice.
it just goes from there. And it's like, whoa. And as Army folks, we want to do what we're told to do. So we go in it with like gusto, and we're like, all right, sweet, I'm gonna freaking come up with the best report, whatever. And you go through this stuff, and the DEI, like everybody talking about DEI was just starting to really come in with like James Lindsay and all them doing their reports, and Helen Pluckrose and their Cynical Theories book. I read it, a couple years back, and all those things started to click as I'm going through this course, because everything was around race. It's not about like actual equality at the start, and then you get to go through meritocracy to get to your levels. No, it's all about equity, 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 and it's final equity. So one of your last projects as part of the program before you go back to your school and you have the option to continue with this master's program is to, how are you going to generate more equity in your ROTC program at your school? And then I'm like, equity, why do they keep talking about equity? Well, it's all part of DEI, and they're forcing it down our throats like it's going out of style. And it's pushed. And I was going to continue with that master's degree because I kind of like being a teacher. And I like teaching ROTC. I don't know what else I would teach, but it took me a minute to put two and two together. And I'm like, that's literally all it is. It's trying to push that shit straight into ROTC, the last bastion, I would think, of something that, minus the hard sciences, but it's even getting in there too, of, how we crack these guys and get this shit in there too. And that's what it was. And I was just, okay, well, I'm not completing this degree. You're not getting any of my money because this is bullshit. Like, there's no way, like, I'm not going to be part of this bullshit where it doesn't matter where you started from. Doesn't matter what type of effort you put in, we're just going to make it equitable at the end. And that is just pure Marxism. And that's all it is. It's all based on the same principles of Marxism and communism and all that bullshit.
Of course it is. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, okay, well, I'm not gonna partake. So yeah, it was eye-opening. It was fun to just try to be in the inside of this and see all this bullshit. And you could see it at the university level. It's fucking everywhere. And depending on in our case, the professor of military science and what they want to push. I mean, I don't know, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily as like unchangeable as perhaps like you, but I had some students, like, I changed all of my curriculum. I took what ROTC produces and I would tweak it to what I thought was the best way to get the students involved and to teach and I don't like doing a lecture. I want them to interact with me. So I had all my students like trying to produce end of term reports. And I had these two track athletes come up and tell me that Napoleon defeated the French at Waterloo. And I was like, this is going to be an interesting report.
There's so much wrong in that sentence.
I was like, what the f are you talking about? And so I just sat there listening to the report, and at the end, and I was like, okay, now, question and answer time. And like, Napoleon Bonaparte, the Emperor of France. Right. He defeated the French at the Battle of Waterloo. You're right. Positive. You're positive about this, right?
Well, like, yes, in a very existential way, I guess, in an existential way.
Sure.
Because bad decisions at Waterloo. I mean, if you want to look at it that way, then he defeated his own people by being a dumb fuck.
I was like, well, so who was the Duke of Wellington then?
Right.
Who was that guy? Who are the British? Who's their leader? And it's just spiraled out of control. And I'm like, I'm gonna fucking fail.
Isn't he that guy that invented that delicious roast? The Duke of Wellington.
And I just was like, this is bullshit. And I went and talked to the PMS about it, and she's like, no, you can't fail him. I'm like, what? What the fuck? Like, okay. She's like, well, you can grade them on that and give them an F, but like the way we have to run things, like the majority of their grade was, basically attendance and participation.
Right.
And I had set up my class and this was like MS2s at the time, because it was open enrollment. It set it up so they basically had to participate. I had all kinds of activities set up in the class where they had to get up in front of the class and talk. So I was like, okay, well, they did all those things, so I couldn't fail them. But she's like, you will absolutely not fail them. Like, what the fuck? All right, this is bullshit. But
Did you pull out the that's undue command influence, ma'am? In the Uniform Code of Military Justice, that's paragraph 316-A. You could have pulled that card out. I'll have to go to
no,
the IG with this. I'll have to go to the brigade IG with you give me no, I probably not the best place to fight that battle, but I'm technically
it
correct.
wasn't. They weren't contract. They were not even cadets. It was open
Right.
enrollment.
No, I
They weren't going anywhere.
I get it. I get it to a certain extent. I get
I
it.
took one look at her and was like, "This isn't the hill I'm going to die on for this
No,
bullshit."
no, I would not either. Not on that one.
But it's indicative of the attitude and the mentality and some. Yeah, I would say
Yeah.
though, I would say that a lot of the cadets, the ones that I taught full time and the ones I'm teaching here, when I get involved with them, it used to be like you had good students across the board. I felt, and I really feel like there's almost the dichotomy has grown. The distance between the good and the just there to get their degree, and because they get passed through because everybody gets A's now and all that other bullshit that's in colleges,
Mhm.
that gap has grown
I imagine that's my
significantly.
perception. That's my perception. Even in the schools that haven't, gulped the fucking the
Economy is the right word.
yeah, I mean even the schools that managed to stay little bit out of the fray on that, some of the private schools and Christian schools and my undergrad school was a Jesuit university, so
Yeah.
that wouldn't even have been in a consideration. Of course, I'm old, but um the that wouldn't even been a consideration. But even in those schools, I know that it's a little bit harder. But I if I had kids, they would not be going to as much as I love being an alumni. One of my proud alumni patches I wear is the University of Washington. There is no fucking way I'd let a kid of mine go to that school these days. There's no fucking way.
Yeah.
And that's sad for me to say because I'm very proud of that school.
Yeah.
And great school, great public university. But um, I would, a matter of fact, if I had a kid right now that was of college age, I'd go, the trades are a good place to go.
Yep.
We can
Both.
always learn you what you need to learn you. I mean, you got an old man here that's got 3 master's degrees and, basically PhD level on a lot of stuff. We can learn you what you want. The
Both.
trades.
Both my
Yeah.
wife and I are both of the same opinion at this point in time.
Are
We're
you?
both, and she grew up in a family that was like, you will go to college, you will go to college, you will go to college. And I did to some extent too. My dad was pissed when I enlisted because he was the first person on any side of his family anywhere in his history to go to college and graduate. So he was like, you'll get a degree. Unless they're going to school for something that, definitely requires them to have a degree,
Right.
I, get a trade, go do something else. Like I go to, or, go to I don't want to disparage my old school, but Sac State's gotten shitty politically wise anyways, but
I've heard. I got
go,
a friend whose kid's there right now. Yeah.
go to a state school. You don't have to go to some freaking expensive ass Ivy League or, whatever
Right.
school spending. I mean, there's some schools around here that are $35,000 a semester. It's just,
Yeah.
what? You don't have to go into that level of debt. You don't have to spend that much money to get, arguably, if you apply yourself, not too much of a difference in a degree, and expose yourself more than likely to a whole host of bullshit that is not even relative to what you're trying to do and
Right.
what type of education you're trying to get. And both of us are of the same mindset. It's like, it really, if you're not going for something very specific, then go do something else. Like, you can make money, good money, doing a lot of other stuff than going to school and getting yourself in a shit ton of debt.
Yep.
For what?
When I went to college, when I started my bachelor's degree, first bachelor's degree, it was in the late '80s. There was no such thing as the internet. There was no such thing as these
Yeah.
computers that were a billion times more powerful than the Apollo, mission computer that had the entire world on it. You had to
Mm-hmm.
go to the library and know how to use the card catalog system and know how to do research and stuff like that. And I had like the original Nintendo like 8-bit when I went to college because I had money from scholarships and working in the mills in summer. So that was like the most advanced thing I owned.
Yep.
Um, so in order to achieve what I wanted to achieve, I was always really good grades, class salutatorian, I very high GPA coming out of my first my first bachelor's degree. And so I had to do that to achieve the knowledge that I wanted, because that's where it was. I had to go where the knowledge was located and get it unlocked for me from these smart men and women that taught me. That was really the system back then. But that is not so necessary anymore. It really isn't. Everything's changed, with technology. And I can tell you that, if I, being the same brain that I've got, I would still choose to go get an education because I'm addicted to academics. I'm always online taking classes or in a actual degree program at some point. I've only been a few years where I haven't been doing something like that. Um, that fits my brain. I love academics. I love knowledge. I love that type of stuff. I have bachelor's in biology, English, and physics. That's weird, but it's eclectic, but that's the way my brain works. And I love all three of those things.
Mhm.
My biology stuff is way out of date, but I keep up on it, just kind of reading online and stuff like that. But most people aren't like that. Most people aren't like that. I admire men and women who can dedicate their life to being an artisan, a somebody who's an artist about a certain job. I watch those videos. I go down those YouTube or reels, holes about people who are just making stuff and they're experts at it. I don't even care what it is.
Yeah.
It can be weird baskets or something like that. And I just admire people who are that dedicated to it and can be in the zen. That is not me. I'll tell you, that is not me. I have my artistic side. I have my photography business and I love doing stuff like
Mhm.
that, my writing and all that. But I think I completely agree with you. It depends on your brain. I grew up, very poor, in a very dysfunctional family. The one thing my mother always did, she always squirreled away a little bit of money for books for me
Mhm.
all the time. And my mom and dad both, we had encyclopedias. That was my internet. We had a set of Encyclopedia Britannica. That was my internet as a kid growing up.
Oh yeah.
National Geographics. Those are my internets. That's the way my brain works. I get bored. I could not sit there in front of a computer screen and scroll all day and do, you know, programming and coding and stuff like that. I would probably kill myself within the first 2 days of trying to get a job like that, even though there is a creativity to that. But I think I agree with you. I think it's we got way off the DEI deal, but it's an
Yeah.
interesting discussion because so much has changed, and I don't know.
Well,
I wouldn't do it.
it is
I would not recommend
interconnected
it.
because I mean you've got that's that's how they're trying to control everything.
Sure,
If
sure.
they can, if you love education, but there's others that can go and self-educate and or go into the trades, but if everything all the way through, elementary school, middle school, high school is you got to go to college, you got to go to college, you got to go to college, and they start that DI bullshit way at the junior levels now in elementary school and middle school. That's why we fought as all hell to get our kids into charter schools. It's but it and that can creep in there too. But they start young. You got to go to college. It's the whole path of indoctrination, and it culminates. And now you can see all this shit at Columbia and Yale and all that shit going on now with these freaking protesters. But it's all part of it because that's the DEI stuff is all based off of those Marxist principles that there's always an oppressor and there's always the oppressed.
Yep.
You have to break that out,
It's
and it
binary. It's
always
binary, baby.
it is always in there. And so that DEI stuff, it trickles down to all the little schools. And then, like I said, they got to trickle it back up. So they got to get you to go into a trade school. Oh, you're not smart enough to go to college, whatever the hell other stupid excuses they'll come up with. You know, I know tons of smart ass people that I've served with and that I work with now that don't have a college degree. They've gone through trade schools, got their certifications, and so much other knowledge that they've gained through life. Well, they also didn't get indoctrinated by the college
Yeah.
professors teaching
Yep.
them bullshit.
Yeah.
And so it's that's the process now, and they've got it set, and that's the scariest shit right there to
Well,
me.
and these aren't the people that are whining and crying about shit and protesting or anything like that because they're too busy living life, too busy making good money from these trades that they've learned, taking care of their families and having really nice houses and their place on the lake and their toys that they enjoy. And that's maybe the formula life that I don't necessarily want, but I admire that. I think that's wonderful. I should say I respect that. These aren't the people that are making hue and cry and all that kind of thing. These are the people now that are getting really pissed off Oh, the MAGA deplorables and all that stuff they get called, and these
Whatever.
despicable people that we got called by the current president and all that, us racists and, people that are fascists and all that. Yeah, these are the people that didn't get indoctrinated, that actually went out in the world and built stuff for the people that did get indoctrinated.
Yep.
And I always emphasize that. It's like, anytime you hear, oh, we don't need men and stuff like that. Well, hey, that cell phone that you're using to record yourself, you're fucking welcome. That medicine that saved your ass when you were a kid, you're welcome. That road that you traveled down and that bridge you went across to get there to go to that protest, you're fucking welcome.
Hmm.
And those houses that you lived in as a kid, oh, you're welcome. And
Yeah.
and I know, and that's not misogyny, it's just reality. It's just fucking reality. And I wouldn't say things like that if there wasn't a reason to these days, because now you have to. And
I I
you know,
I, I was watching. Do you know who Douglas Murray is?
yeah, absolutely. He's one of my
Yeah,
favorite. He's one of
he's
my favorites
awesome.
these days. He's a
Now,
fearless
oh,
motherfucker.
I watched his speech at the Manhattan Institute. I think it was yesterday on. It was posted on. This is where I saw it, anyways. Was on trigonometry. I don't know if you heard of those
Yeah,
guys.
I know it well. Constantine Kissin and yeah.
Yes. And one of the comments, I love it. It's a quote from his speech, but it goes on to this stuff too. No one bothers with pronouns. Life is too serious. And it's like, perfect. It's like, what the? Like, this is the thing. People who get education in something, um, whatever. If you want to get an education in some other stuff, there was a ton of freaking film students at U of O. I don't know why, but whatever. That was popular because it's probably fucking easy as all hell. But I don't know what you're going to get your job in. I mean, you're all going to move to LA and somehow take over the film industry. That's not going to happen. You got to be something realistic. I mean, again, with the whole DEI fucking chain to the top now, get you completely indoctrinated by the time you're out of college.
Right.
Okay, you come into this real world where you actually got to do shit, and no one gives a shit about your fucking pronouns in the real world, especially in most of the real world outside of the Western world.
Right. Right.
Life is too fucking serious. You got to do something. You got to build something. You have to do something to freaking survive and to keep your kids alive and, live long enough so you can see your grandkids, you hope. And fucking no one gives a shit about your pronouns. Life is too fucking serious, man. It's
Ah, yeah,
sad.
I won't even go down the pronoun rabbit hole. You probably hear me do it on the Two Grumpy Bastards all the
And
time.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of in my life. It's just narcissism the chickens have come home to roost because of how this generation.
Oh, shit. We
It's
can talk
just
about that too.
just narcissism. Just another
Oh,
example of the most narcissistic. I'm sorry. I was just having this conversation today too about we won't get too deep into this, but I don't know the kid in Oregon that just won the 200-yard state championship.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That kind of narcissism just and that's a younger person, so the narcissism is probably in his parents' laps there.
Well,
But that
yeah.
level of narcissism where a dude would want to pretend to be a chick so they could win a race, what the fuck is wrong with you? I mean, I would have killed every chick ever in high school and everything ever. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just how good would I feel about myself doing that? No, I would have felt like shit because I was raised to, honor women a little bit like our favorite NFL Chiefs kicker was.
Yep.
I was raised to do that. We're different and we honor that. We honor those
Yep.
differences. And I know we got way off topic again, but that's okay.
No, I was gonna say, like, I had another one actually that reminded me somehow. The last couple months of my command time, um, we had to have one of our OPD sessions was taken over by this pronouns bullshit and all that stuff, and we had to have this giant lecture, with the legal team about what you can and can't do with transgender soldiers. And they gave up all these, try not to go too long on it. They gave up all these examples of what you can and can't do. And we were still on, basically, depending on the units, 1 year on in Afghanistan or 9 months on, a year and a half off kind of rotations. And you're talking to a bunch of, at that time, everybody had just come back from deployments. We were in command. I got lucky enough to command at Fort Rucker and teach flight school. Most of us had just come off of deployments downrange, and they were talking about shit like, well, you know, if you have a transgender soldier, you have to let them shower in the same or in the whatever shower that they identify in, and you cannot segregate your bathrooms. It's like, okay, well, what happens when another soldier is uncomfortable? Say, in this case, like we got all that going on all the time now. What if you got a male soldier who's transitioning, who wants to shower with the females because he identifies as a female? Well, what happens if the female soldiers aren't cool with that? Well, then you have to uh, set up separate times for separate showers. Well, you just told me I couldn't segregate.
Oh my fucking God. Oh my God.
Well, and it's just like, this is horrible logic. I can't segregate, but now I have to segregate because
And you're
someone
going to take up precious man hours. And I said man hours, precious man hours to manage something that should never even be part of the conversation. Fucking conversation.
And that was the argument that like three of us stood up in that stupid fucking OPD session. And we're like, okay, how many of you here, you know, prior enlisted have been on a fob where you guys had one fucking bathroom hooch? One. You come back from a mission, you've got like maybe 6 to 8 hours to reset. That includes maintenance on your vehicles, maintenance on your weapon systems, maybe some sleep and chow, and then you got to go out and do it again. You got one bathroom, one fucking bathroom. And now we have to segregate times separate so somebody can be in there by themselves because they're uncomfortable because somebody looked at them wrong. It's like, how the hell are you supposed to do this shit? This is logistically impossible. What are the risks we're going to take here? You know, that like, okay, now everyone's got to just wait. And now, you know, all right. I mean, you get some weird skin shit going on when you don't ever bathe for days and days and days and weeks and weeks and weeks.
Oh my God.
Like
yeah,
we go out for.
I'm just astonished this is even being discussed in the military.
Oh yeah, that would have been, like you said, at the end of Obama's era. That was end of 2016, and then, you know, January 17, everything just pow turned off like a light switch. I was like, oh wow, okay, well, we'll just forget about all that shit from last year. But it was just the discussion was just, it's so fucking stupid. It's like, how do you expect us to do this shit? It doesn't work.
I make the point over and over again. People have this idea like the entire world's populated by transgender people, and it's not even close to being true. This is a construct. It's a social construct, and you know we're letting a stub of a tail like this wag a fucking 300-pound Rottweiler for policy. Fuck that bullshit. Number one, if you think you're transgender, and there are certain people who are born, absolutely. But guess what? I am an expert on what's in the DSM-5. It's a mental health disorder, folks. Sometimes it is a biological mix-up, but that is like 0.0001% of the population of the Earth.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was gonna say,
so
the
there are certain things that disqualify you from being in the military. Certain things, certain medical, certain mental and physical things that won't allow you to come into the military. To me, I'm sorry. Fuck that bullshit. You're talking about all this DEI stuff. You know what we were taught to teach you guys? Tactics, fucking warfare, war fighting, and military ethos. Those were our three prime objectives to teach you guys when we were instructors.
Wow.
That was it. We're going to teach you how to, ethically as possible, be good people doing it, but you're going to break things and kill people. We want you to be as good a people as you possibly can doing it, but that was our mandate. And I tell you what, the United States Army is really good at that back in the day. Really good at that. Best in the world ever.
But that doesn't fit the modern.
Fuck that.
You got to have enough of everybody of every different color, race, gender, ethnicity, and yada 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 yada. Otherwise, it's not DEI. It's not equitable. And
my experience in the Army, it was the biggest melting pot on planet Earth. And I can tell you, my first platoon, when I was a platoon leader, my very first job, my very first active duty job, very first platoon leader, you know, I had 31 killers. I was supposed to have like 42, but you're always way, under
always under strength.
And we were DRF too. I mean, we were, rapid deployment guys, always under strength, but I was one of 3 dudes in the platoon. One of 3 white guys, excuse me, not one of 3 dudes. One of 3 white. Yeah, I was going to say, no. I was in the Cav. No, it wouldn't have been that way. But no, I was one of 3 white guys. And that was a running joke. Like all my NCOs were either Puerto Rican or black. And they would make fun of that. It's like, oh, got to send the white boy to keep us, what's in, but that was a joke. It was like funny.
Oh, yeah.
They made fun of me and I made fun of them too, and it was just like, that was DEI, baby, back in the day. It was like meritocracy.
We all bleed green. was the old saying.
Yeah.
It-
You know,
or-
I am proud to say in all my years being a leader in the Army, I had maybe 2 actual racist incidents that happened, and they were pretty mild. It wasn't like fights or assaults or anything like
Yeah,
that. It was stupid, the N-word may have come out of one guy's mouth, which you deal with that immediately. Um, Another was, I don't even remember what it was, but they weren't like assaults or anything like that.
yeah.
Um, Plenty of EOs, plenty of 15-6s, plenty of that stuff, and none of it ever came to fruition because I did my job.
Yeah.
And for the most part, 90% of my soldiers and NCOs were awesome. Well, 30% of them were awesome. The next, 40 to 50% were good. We're good. And then you had your bottom,
Yeah.
but I tried to scare the shit out of those kids, and keep
But you
them in
all,
line.
everybody gave everybody else a good rash of shit.
That's the way it's supposed to be. It's ball busting, baby.
Yes, that's it.
And even when I got up in rank and I started having females in my units and stuff like that, I'll tell you what, some of my female soldiers would bust balls better than most of my men did.
Yep.
And I
Had
loved
plenty
it.
of those. Had
Yeah,
plenty
yeah.
of those.
To this
Yeah.
very day, I remember very specifically, I had a female master sergeant who I dearly love to this very day. She was a very, very awesome person. And I think I was probably a major when she worked for me. And I said something in my office about um, something about, and I was so used to saying whatever I wanted to around her. And there was another female in there too, and she was cool too. She was an ex-drill instructor talking to her, and I said something about that's just gonna make that's just gonna give us all a big all set of rigid balls, something cool like that. And she goes, "Well, sir, and those of us that don't have those, we'll grow them for that occasion." I mean, that was her comeback instead of being offended, and
Yes.
that was hilarious. That was absolutely hilarious. That's the way I was used to having it. My family in the Army was. And I mean, you were around me enough to know my style was, kind of be that sand in the oyster, and hence would come a pearl. And I mean,
Oh yeah.
that was kind of my style. Russ was a lot more direct and overt and mean, and I was just always trying to
Yes.
get a little bit of friction there, a little bit of friction, a little bit of, as I used to say, I am the whetstone that's going to hone the sword of your soul, bitch. And that was kind of my way of developing people. Of course, I was a nice guy, you know that. I actually did love you guys and enjoy you
Oh
guys.
yeah.
I had a good sense of humor, and you guys gave me a lot of ration of shit that I thought was hilarious. But it's got to be, you got to have that balance. And
Yeah.
this
I mean,
DEI shit kills that. It kills that. It kills morale. It absolutely
yep.
kills
Oh,
morale.
it absolutely kills morale. But back to that point, what you were just saying about being the instructor, like, and it's funny, which is another reason why I've really been happy that I've kept in touch with so many of my students, or that they want to keep in touch with me, is like, you remember the tough instructors who are tough but fair and care about you. The
Right.
ones that are just an asshole, yeah, you probably remember them for just being an asshole, but
Yeah.
you don't really care about them. I don't remember really any of my teachers or instructors that were just pushovers, because they never really have that much of an impact on you. The ones
Sure.
that bust your balls when you fuck up, the ones that drag you through the coals when you need to be dragged through the coals because you didn't remember something, especially in the aviation community, it's just like,
Oh, sure.
you remember them, but you also have, it's usually, probably at the time, sometimes, well, more often than not, you fucking hate them. But then you get a few years down the line, you're like, holy shit, it all makes sense now. That's why it's like, yeah, no shit. No shit. They
Yeah.
were trying to prep you for what you needed to be prepared for. You just didn't see it at the time or couldn't quite understand it. And it's just, I always loved the instructors that were freaking hard asses, but fair. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. You wanted, and you made, it was just like having coaches in athletics and stuff like that. Those are the guys that you wanted to impress.
yeah,
Those are the guys that you're going to work your ass off, because if you got a little bit of an attaboy from somebody like that, that meant the world to you. It's not
yep,
like your pastor coming up to you and going, "Oh, it's so blessed to see you today, Anthony. It's so good to see you." And it's like, you're going to say that no matter what.
yep.
Not that
You'd
I
say
don't
it to
love
me.
my pastor. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
But yeah, I totally agree with you. Well, I have hopes that this next election might root that out again, and maybe our soldiers and people across the Department of Defense will know what being in the military is like again. Because I don't
yeah,
care if it sounds harsh or not. There are certain things that should disqualify you from serving in the military, and there's no way you should make that much fucking leeway and change those many policies for such a tiny percent of the population. And I believe a lot of those people are mentally unhealthy. And I'm not saying I hate them or that's a bad thing. Shit,
Exactly.
if I gave you a list of my mental health issues, you'd probably go, "What the fuck am I talking to this psycho?" Funny, not psycho, but
Oh,
everybody's
yeah,
got their issues. Everybody's got
it's
their issues, but I certainly don't have that.
yeah.
I know where I came from and what I got. I know what the tools that God gave me, and I'm straighter than an arrow machine, baby, and I'm happy with that.
So many of these problems all come from people like you saying talking busting balls and shit, and everyone wants to take offense for somebody else and or reading into comments too much. It's like, okay, yeah, there's certain mental conditions that should bar you from service. That is not a like, oh, you suck, you're less of a human. You're still a
Not at
human.
all. Not at
You
all.
just like certain jobs have certain requirements. Like we are meant to be put in harm's way, and you have to have a certain mental capacity to deal with that. And if you're already dealing with, you know, whatever those issues already are, how the fuck are you going to add all that extra shit onto you and expect you to still operate and not get yourself killed or other people around you killed? And again, like we were talking about before we got to the recording part again, it's so much of this shit. There's the loudest people of this. It's a tiny percentage on either end of the spectrum on X, Twitter, whatever. It it's so actual such a tiny percentage of these people that are just pushing this shit, and they're the loudest complainers, so they get the attention.
Yeah, I know. And I try to tell people that all the time. I told somebody who I probably don't get along with anymore. That
Well,
wanted to that and it's probably okay. But she had to come out on Instagram, a fellow photographer, and wanted to come out and express to the world how offended she was at Harrison Butker's comments. And I basically said flat out, "Well, that makes you a narcissist and a bigot." What? I go, it's none of your concern what he said to a small group of Catholic students as a devout Catholic to a bunch of other Catholics. This was not a public speech. This was not a
yeah,
public statement. He wasn't talking to you. Okay. So for you to say, well, I don't care. You can't give me any advice on what I should do. He wasn't giving you advice at all. He wasn't talking to you. So that means you're a narcissist. And secondly, he was expressing his religious views. So I guess that's kind of bigoted for you to say that he was wrong and all these monstrous things because he's following a very traditional Catholic line. So I guess you're anti-Catholic, which makes you anti-religious, which makes you kind of a bigot. Cricket, 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 cricket.
yeah,
I'm sure I probably got blocked after that, but I'm right. I'm absolutely right. I didn't agree with, some of this. I mean, and me having a Catholic background, I
yeah,
didn't, it's not like I 100% agree. Who cares if I agree with them or not? Who cares? You
yeah.
know,
You guys were talking about it last week. I think I heard just earlier today his jersey is now
number one seller. I love
number
it
one
when there's a
seller in the entire NFL.
I love it when there's a positive backlash like that. Like when Hollywood tried to bury The Sound of Freedom last year, the movie, and it became like the biggest movie in the country.
Yep.
And
Hmm.
and the Bud Light boycott of a little over a year ago. And I love it when
That was freaking 2 years. Oh, wasn't it just a year
no,
ago? Yeah,
it
it
was
was
just a year ago.
2023.
Yeah, because I remember where I was. Yeah, yeah. Um, when I was because Russ and I were talking about that a lot on a few
Yes.
podcasts. And yeah, I was staying up at up in Tacoma a lot then, and yeah, doing the podcast from up there. But yeah, no, it's nice that this stuff is starting to wake up. And like the number one, I do you follow Matt Walsh at all?
Not as much as I used to, but yeah, I follow him.
Yeah. And like I always say about Matt Walsh, I appreciate a lot about what he does and his viewpoints. He's much further to the right than I am, and there's a lot that I don't agree with him on. As far as I'm a libertarian, but I'm not an isolationist, and I think it's a lazy,
Yeah.
naive way to look at the world. But
Ah,
his children's book he wrote about the walrus, or the boy who
yes.
thinks he's the walrus, became the
Yep.
number one children's book in the nation, best
Yep.
selling children's book in the country, and it's
Yep.
all about the madness of identifying yourself as something. And you know
Yeah.
anyway,
There's another one. No college education.
I can see it sometimes with some of the stuff he says. I'll be quite honest with you,
Yeah.
but he's a brilliant guy in
Oh yeah.
many. Yeah,
Yeah.
he is.
I'm just
His,
I'm just pointing it out. Like he was one of those who, probably was on the track to go to college and decided, nope, this isn't for me.
well, I hand it to him. He's a young guy, but he saw the forest for the trees
Yeah.
long before a lot of people did, and said, "No, I'm not going to get $100,000 in debt from something that's never going to benefit me." And
Well,
Yeah, in any way, shape, or form. So no, I admire him. Like I said, there's a few things I have a bone to pick with him on. His view on mental health really pisses me off, where he doesn't think like, mental illness exists. It's just a kind of a construct, and it's like, yeah, you're fucked off.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
I think my opinion on that is that it exists. I think it's just extremely overblown these
I would
days.
agree with that. I would agree with that.
Everybody who's got some kind of problem is it's just everybody fucking has anxiety, man. But now
Being
it's
somebody being somebody who has the educational background and degrees and having benefited or not benefited from being in therapeutic environments myself, I would agree. Abigail Schreier just came out with a very interesting book about that, how the mental health system in this country has actually made things worse.
yeah,
It has.
yeah,
It has. And there's reasons why behind that. We won't get into that right now and probably get into
money,
that future podcast, but
money.
yeah, no
And
kidding. There's a lot of well-meaning people out there who just have followed the modalities that,
yeah,
but it's like, this
we got
doesn't work. I mean, this just doesn't,
it's always one of the other shows I listen to. They always talk about the bouncing between the guardrails, and it was they got rid of the mental institutes because that had its own issues, and so that was considered, inhumane and the wrong way of doing it. So we got rid of those. Well, now the other end of the spectrum has become, well, the academic side of it is screw it. You've got anxiety, you've got ADHD, you've got ADD, you've got whatever the common ones are for kids, especially. Drugs. Here you go. Drugs. Let's just suppress everything about
right.
your actual mental acuity, the way your brain is supposed to function, and just here you go. More drugs, more
Right.
drugs, more drugs. And then we wonder why the kids, when they get to college or, right out of college, are just freaking basket cases because they've never been forced, again, to what we were talking about earlier, they've never been forced to actually struggle. They've never had to struggle. They've been guided. And when you repress all those other things that are natural parts of your growing up, the mental things and exercises you have to go through, the mental stressors you have to go through to make you a better human being, they've all been suppressed. So what the hell but okay, now you got more anxiety, we got more whatever depression. I hate to say it, but the answer is always just, okay, here's some more drugs. Well, and those shits are not cheap.
They're not cheap, and like as well-meaning and as the VA has some wonderful providers. I think they have the best mental health system for trauma, particularly, of course, than any place else in the world. I mean, I've met a lot of the providers, and I've never seen a bad. Well, I saw one bad one, and guess what? It was a transgender provider. I'm not kidding, and it wasn't because I'm a bigot. It's because he was just terrible at their job, just terrible. But the VA will just prescribe the shit out of you when you get into the system. And if you have PTSD, depression, anxiety, some of it can be helpful, but the goal should be to say, this might be a stopgap in a crisis situation. And then as we go along, we want to take less and less of this medication, and that's the way I handle a lot of the, my depression and other stuff with my providers. I listened to it at first and we played this roulette game of what works and what doesn't. And I had a horrible bad reaction that had a huge impact in my life to something they prescribed me. So after that, I was like, I'm never going to be on anything. Well, I found a nice medium balance of a medication that helps me a little bit with, but before it was like 6-7 medications. I'm not kidding. When I first got into the system, 7 medications every day. Twice a day. And it's just like, fuck that. I do better on the natural stuff, natural supplements, getting up and doing my little worship for half an hour, doing some exercise, listening to my music, doing that kind of thing. That actually has more efficacy to me than any medication I could possibly take for anything. And I don't mean to be simplistic. Some people need, if you're a schizophrenic, you need to be on something. Absolutely.
I'm not,
something,
I hope it should be obvious that I'm not saying that there's no case where medication is needed, but
of course not. No.
In the few times that I talked with my first doc when we got established out here in Idaho, and he's like, well, what's your VA rating for? And I started telling him, and he's like, okay, so for the PTSD, you need to take this. It wasn't even like, do you want to talk to anybody about it? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? It was, here you go. Here's a prescription. I'm like,
Yeah,
what? This was like an old retired Air Force guy, and I'm like, no,
yeah,
just no. But that's been my experience. It's just like instantaneous. There you go. Here's meds. It's like,
yep.
you haven't even. We don't even know each other that well. You haven't sent me to get a psych eval. You haven't sent me to go to the therapist or anything. You just here's meds. Go. All right. Well, I
That's insane. That's insane.
discount everything you tell me now.
No pun
So,
intended. That's insane. But
eh,
yeah. God, I just looked at the time. You and I've gone almost as long as Russ and I usually do.
well, I have a tendency to do that kind of thing when I start talking about this kind of crap.
Yeah, me too. I'm gonna have to wrap it up because I'm
Okay.
in like
You
a
need to go.
tremendous amount of pain and I need to take some ibuprofen and probably go to bed.
Yeah.
But let's keep in contact. Let's have you on in the next few weeks with the actual podcast. Once Russ gets back and stuff, we'll have you back on. A lot of
Yeah.
interesting stuff. We can talk. We can just talk plain old politics, and you can get in on our joke duels and shit like that.
Oh shit. I better have some jokes.
Yeah, they're getting darker and darker every episode.
I noticed that. And I suck for being in, well, my kids are young still, but I suck at dad jokes.
Yeah,
I
we've
don't
kind
know
of
if
shifted from the dad jokes to the like, I've been getting some
they're kind of
feedback from
dark.
some of our pod listeners. Yeah, they're a little bit. One he said and one I said it. I even got God. That was dark even for you, Coop. I got a comment from somebody that said that. And I'm like, yeah, it kind of was. I can't remember which one it was. It's like it was kind of dark. And then I won't say the one that offended somebody pretty badly, and I kind of get it because maybe that's why I fell down the stairs. The one in particular got my ribs all
Mhm.
busted up. I do believe in that, the whole thing. I'm a man of faith, so things do happen. So anyway,
All right. Well,
well, it's
cool.
it's great catching up with you, my brother.
Definitely.
I would have sat here if my ribs weren't just absolutely screaming at me right now. I probably would have stayed on a lot longer because time just flew by.
Yeah. I'll talk for a while longer. I try to go to bed about midnight, maybe a little bit later, but
That
yeah,
sounds good. Yeah,
it'd be good. I'd love to. I haven't talked with Russ. I don't have his contact information other than Facebook, like unlike you.
yeah,
So
you're
that'd be
not on
good to talk with
Facebook.
him. No, that's the only way I get in touch with Russ is Facebook.
Oh, Facebook.
I
I
don't have
got
his
you.
phone
I
number
got
like
you.
you.
Yeah, I think I put it out. I think I put that text all out too. I could probably. I'm surprised that hopefully he's gonna listen to this, but I think I put it out. I better make sure I did send him a text before I say anything. Yeah, yeah, Ryan Anselmi. I'm surprised he didn't want to jump on because he's kind of a ball hugger. Always has been. He's like a lamprey of the cock.
Oh God.
To give you a little dose of the old major that you remembered from Sac State. Do you remember this? I was just thinking about this when you're
Who
talking
was
about
this
the
guy?
Ryan
Who?
Anselmi. Do you remember Ryan Anselmi? He's a good dude. I'm just fucking
And
around.
sell me.
Yeah, good dude.
Where was he? Was he primarily at Davis?
He was at Davis. Yeah, so
Nah,
you probably didn't see
I
him a
didn't.
whole lot.
I tried not to mix with those Davis folks too often.
I know. And then they made me the XO for both programs. That was painful, but no. Um, did you end up you were there when Captain Hyoko was the running the program or
Yeah, Captain
yeah,
Hyoko, he was the
yeah,
National Guard guy, wasn't he?
yeah, Calgard. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
good dude.
was still there when I got to U of O.
Oh, really? He was still
Yeah,
working that job. I'll
yeah.
be
I don't
darned.
know what he was doing, but I jumped on some battalion or brigade call, and I was sitting there waiting, and there goes his name across there on the Zoom call. I'm like, what the? And I messaged him on the side. I'm like, are you what? You still here? He's like, oh, hey, Forrest. I'm like,
Yeah.
fuck, how are
Yeah.
you still here?
Right, right. Um, that
I
is
think,
bizarre. That's bizarre that he was there that long. I haven't been able to get a hold of him. I've tried to look for him on social media and stuff, and I haven't been able to find him. But good dude. I liked him. He's a good friend of mine.
well,
Uh,
message me out. I can't remember how to spell his name, but I wonder if he's still in global. Probably
yeah, I
find
won't
him.
spell. I won't spell it out here, but I can. I
No,
can.
not here.
I'll
Message me
text
later
you. Yeah, I'll text you. Um,
since I
I was
still.
gonna. I was gonna leave off with a quick anecdote about something that you'd never get away with now, but um,
Uh-oh.
they had a cadet over at UC Davis when I got there, and I was there for a while, and he was scholarship, and there was a fairly high Asian population with the cadets over at Davis. Not
Mm-hmm.
not being judgy, just saying there was,
Yep.
and all good, good kids, but there was one that was the laziest, fucking
Oh.
slowest scholarship kid that I'd ever seen. That includes when I first got to Sac State, and I won't mention his name, but I used to call him Hayabusa in irony, as in the fast Japanese motorcycle, because he was exactly the opposite, and it sounded kind of like his last name. And you remember Sergeant Schmidt, Keith Schmidt, the big blonde guy,
I
the
think
man
so.
child? Yeah, the E7 tanker.
Yeah,
He had the Charger and the pit bulls. He's a fucking great guy. I loved him.
I think
Any,
so.
anyway, and he talked like this. He talked kind of black, and he was like 6'4", and he was blonde.
I think I only ever interacted with him at FTXs, but yeah.
Right. Big, good looking dude. Yeah. Big strapping blonde dude. Yeah. Anyway, great guy. Great guy. And he would just die laughing when I'd call that kid Hayabusa. So what I did was I took a huge baked potato, like a baker potato, and I drew a face on it. And I wrote cadet blank on the back of it. And instead of talking to him directly, I would just take the potato over and start talking to the potato in front of him. And then I
Yeah,
would
you probably could not get away with that today.
in formation, I'd put the potato down by his feet and make the potato stand at attention, and I would yell at the potato instead of yelling at him. Yeah, that was my
I used
technique
to be able
getting
to do
through
shit
that.
like that.
Well, it was funny, and you know what? I'm sure it wasn't fun for him at first, but he actually came around. He actually, by the end of the semester, he was actually at least passing PT tests, and at least would say more than one word to you going by.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah,
you
well,
know,
imagine that. If you give them a little
yeah,
bit of tough love, they actually turn themselves around. If they're actually meant for it and made for it, they'll actually turn
right.
themselves around. Imagine
And
that.
you got to admit, that's funny as fuck.
Yeah, reminds me of all the other stupid shit we used to do in the army. Like you're late all the time, then the private carries around the clock all the time. You
Right,
know,
right.
and why are you carrying around a clock? Oh, I don't know what time it is. Okay, whatever.
My very last army job, I had a rather large staff, and I was talking to my S4, and the master sergeant, and one of his PFCs comes up and interrupts us while we're talking.
Oh boy.
You know, you've got an O5 and an E8 talking, and he interrupts us while we're talking and tells me I'm wrong about something that I'm saying to my E8. And I just looked at my master sergeant, who I was good friends with too, and he knew what was going to happen. I had to do the play acting thing, and I go, Master Sergeant, you better square this motherfucker away. And I just went in my office, and I get the knock, 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 and they both come in, and I just sat there and just ripped the Master Sergeant apart in front of his PFC. It was all, you know how it is, where it's all a play. It's
Mhm.
all a play. And so I'm sitting there and go, I think we need to come up with something creative, because, and this kid's in tears by now because I'm tearing his boss a new one, who, you know, all that. I think we need to come up with something creative. I said, so I tell you what, for 30 days for corrective training, I said, I'm going to write this counseling statement out. I'm going to keep it in my drawer. You know, that whole stupid game that you play. For the next 30
Mhm.
days for corrective training, every time you see me, you have to bow and refer to me as Your Excellency or Your Grace every time. And then so that was you know me, you know, and so I'm gonna try to teach by using a sense of humor and fucking with somebody. To that kid's credit, about a week into it, he started making a game out of it. So that I was we had this huge box building, one of those, you know, they took us out of the nice buildings and put us in these corporate looking boxes with all the cubicles and stuff like that. And so he would kind of watch when I walked out of my office, because I was famous for never being in my office, just walking around with a cup of coffee and chatting people up and seeing how everybody was. So he would kind of head me off if I was heading to the latrine, or if I was going upstairs or going anywhere. He'd make sure that he was around the corner, and he'd pop out, Your Excellency. And he'd do it very loud and make sure everybody could see it. And everybody's like, what is that? Is that guy abusive? He's making that kid, you know, what the hell's that all about? So the very last day, his day 30, when he came off of corrective training, no kidding, you know, I had the very first parking spot, you know, the old fashioned army, where I had the parking spot in the sidewalk up to my office right there where you walk in the building. He comes out, and I start walking up, and the door opens, and I can tell something's up because I had heads all looking out the windows like little meerkats. And he comes out, no kidding, if he didn't throw a red rug down in front of me as I walked into the building. I don't
Kudos
know
to
who gave
him.
him the idea, but I'm like, all right, now the kid gets it. All right. All right. Now he's earned my
Wow.
fucking respect. Yeah. Yeah. You know, little creative techniques. But anyway, can't get
Wow.
away with that stuff. I'm sure you couldn't get away with that stuff
No,
anymore.
I'm pretty sure someone would say you're hazing that soldier or
Well, I
something.
absolutely was hazing his ass, just like I was Cadet Hayabusa, which wasn't
Wow.
his name, but
As always, there
I
are
hazed his.
degrees,
I
and
never
that is
hazed you. I never hazed you. I gave you shit because you didn't need hazing, but I gave you a lot of shit, but it was all more like ball busting shit.
there's degrees. There's always degrees.
Yeah.
Like you can obviously take it too far.
Absolutely.
Obviously the soldier took
I
it the
never
right
physically
way.
hurt anybody. Never physically hurt
Yeah.
any. I didn't want to do any kind of physical. Russ was into that because he was the MS3 instructor, and that was his job, to teach tactics and prepare people for Warrior Forge and all that kind of thing. That was kind of his job. Mine was more the mental, emotional side of things, and so that's where I wanted to get in your head and fuck with you. You know,
man, doesn't fuck with this. Yep.
Yep.
Alrighty.
Oh well, good fun. You guys were like I said, you guys were like my big old 3D video game. That's what it was to me.
I mean, you gotta. I also look at it this way, and I'm sure you look at it this way too. This is your legacy in the Army.
Yeah,
and that legacy gets passed down. So that's how I look at my soldiers.
Absolutely. You know, and I couldn't be prouder. You guys, God, so many of you did, most of you did so goddamn well. I mean, looking at some of you aviators, you know, like Chris and, you know, Adriana and some of the guys that went ahead of you, and, you know, a lot of these special forces guys, like,
oh God. Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing the amount of success that we had out of that program. I had a little bit to do with that. I don't know how much, but a little bit. And that makes me really,
every once in a while, this is where you run into, oh God, I can see both their faces, but I cannot remember their names. One of them was 2 years behind me, and one of them was he was an MS5 when I was an MS3, but ran into both of them in Afghanistan. One of the dudes, the guy that was 2 years behind me, he was one of the went into the special forces, and I'm laying in my Chinook at this tiny ass fob in the middle of nowhere, and I had to piss, and so I climb out of the helicopter and I run behind this building because there's nowhere to go piss. I don't know where their latrine is, and I come back around, and there's this dude standing in the back of my helicopter, and we're like, I remember you. It's like, holy shit, man. And yeah, and then the other one, the MS5, when I was a 3, I was standing in line at the chow hall at Shank, and the dude turns around, and I'm just like, holy shit. Yeah, and there he is. He was like I was just pinned captain, and this dude was like senior captain. He was a logistics officer. He was just loving life. It was just ridiculous. Yeah, and just you run into these guys just randomly. And yeah, I haven't talked with Chris in a while, but I think he's over in Nevada now, flying with the Nevada National Guard.
I haven't talked to him in a few years, but yeah, I keep up with him on Facebook, see what he's up to sometimes. But yeah,
good Lord.
Yeah.
Oh man. Alrighty.
Well, God bless you. Hey, happy Memorial Day to you, my friend.
Happy Memorial Day to you too. I will be tipping a little bit out. I know you don't anymore, but I'll be tipping a little bit out for the guys I know.
God bless. Yeah, I usually head to the cemetery in Ording, Washington. I don't know if you know where that's at. The Old Soldiers Cemetery. They've got an old soldiers home that's still in active service there, and they've got graves from Civil War vets there, all the way through Afghanistan. So it's a wonderful place to spend a little time on Memorial Day. So
yeah, we're going to go out in the woods backpacking a little bit and camping and be away. I'm not going to have cell signal, thank God, for like
Well, hey everybody, this is Coop, the handsome and debonair one of the Two Grumpy Bastards podcast. Not to mention I'm the only one that's an actual bastard. Google that shit. Don't, actually. Hey, I'm here to do a shameless plug for our merchandise. You can find us at twogrumpybastardsmerchandise.com. We got a whole bunch of new merchandise in. I think you'll like some of the new choices. There's some pro-Second Amendment. There's some anti-Washington State Governor stuff on there. I think you'll really appreciate it. New stuff coming all the time. I have 2 great designs in the works, so please, to support this podcast, that's one of the easiest ways to do it. We're also on Etsy. Yeah, I know, Etsy. You can find our products on eBay as well. Storm King Mercantile is the name of the store there that fronts us. And there's many, many other ways to support this podcast, of course. We have a Patreon page, same thing, Two Grumpy Bastards. We certainly would appreciate you following us on Instagram. Most of you probably know we have a Facebook page, Two Grumpy Bastards Podcast. We have a lot of fun over there, a lot of frivolity, a lot of memes, and a lot of hard-hitting news, believe it or not. A lot of great people in that group. Also, all of the social media outlets, including now on TikTok. You can find us there. And one of the things that I really wanted to tell you is if you have any feedback for Russ, especially because he kind of sucks, feel free to email us at twogrumpybastards@gmail.com. That's the easiest way to get a hold of us, or you can always leave us a comment or an IM on, or DM, I should say. See, I'm so savvy. On our Facebook page. So we really appreciate you listening or watching us over there on YouTube as well.
And we hope you do both, because Russ is something to look at. I said something. I didn't say something really great to look at. Anyway, thanks for listening. This is your intrepid, amazing, and grateful host of the Two Grumpy Bastards podcast, Coop. Remember, keep your focus and stay wokeless.